So, hello for day 4 of the Fast Forward to Now challenge. My name is Suzanne Dupuis. I'm a life leadership coach and a soul mystic. And the reason why I wanted to offer the Fast Forward to Now challenge is that throughout of this pandemic, what I'm feeling is that people are a little bit stretched out, right? We're either hoping for the past to come back or waiting for the future to happen. So by coming back to the present, what we're allowing is to standing in our strength today. So instead of feeling a little bit of anxiety or feeling a little bit of depression, we're able to center it down and come back to our center, come back to now. So, day 4, what I want to focus on is how we speak our truth. A lot of us on a daily basis work out of different masks, work out different roles, work out depending on who we're talking to, change the way we say things, change the way we express who we are and how we feel and where we're at in our lives. And a lot of feeling uncomfortable, a lot of feeling stuck is the fact that we don't speak the truth. We feed a version of the truth to ourselves, but we very, very rarely actually stop, sit down, and speak our truth. Why? Well, sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, right? But the first step to changing anything is to actually sit down and honestly speak the truth. If you have a problem with a motor, the first thing you have to do is know which part of the motor is not working properly. If you have a team issue, then you have to sit down with the team to identify where things are not working properly, right? So this is what today's challenge is all about. Today, what I'm offering you is an opportunity to speak your truth. Now, I'm not saying going around and shouting it over the rooftops and telling everybody this, right? But at least tell it to yourself. Because the one person we often lie the most to is ourselves. We so want to believe we're good. We so want to believe everything's right. We so want to believe everything's coming to us. But at the same time, there's a part of us who knows this is not the truth today. So the idea is not to fall into that truth and fall into the depression or the anxiety that comes with it, right? It's just to honestly observe and write down what is. And how do I feel about that what is? And sometimes that feeling is both good and bad at the same time. And that's important. Nulling out one or the other doesn't work either, right? The idea is to be honest with ourselves. How can you keep a promise to yourself if you can't be honest to yourself? So the first step is to be honest with where you stand today. Now, in my Life Momentum course, what I offer people is to explore 8 different areas, right? 4 areas in your life and 4 types of investments in that life. So the 4 areas that we're going to explore today is the personal environment, the professional arena, the creative hub, and the community environment. So those are the 4 places, if you want, or 4 masks that we all use. And then we're going to explore 4 different types of things that feed us in those environments. First of all, it's the environment, what our surrounding looks like. What types of relationships we build in those environments. What types of adventures or challenges we give each other or we give ourselves in those environments, and what type of knowledge are you building in each of those, right? And the idea when we are going to touch all of these subjects is to just know where I stand now and where am I just like feeling a little bit of a pang telling me, yeah, I'm not quite where I want to be, right? So if we explore the personal environment, look at your life on a personal level, like what's in your personal life? What is good? What is bad? And how do you feel about it? And the feeling is important, right? Because the feeling is heart, it's body, and it's mind at the same time, feeling together. So how do you feel about your personal life? again, speak your truth, right? It's not to degrade, right? We're not there to go in self-sabotage mode at all. Just how do you feel about your life? And sometimes part of it is yuck, right? So what part of it is not so good? What part of it is really awesome? I mean, there's always something awesome in your life. There's always like bits and pieces here and there that could be found, right? We all have nuggets. So which part of it is going, hell yeah, I like this part? Which part of it is like, oh, if I could get rid of this, oh, there would be like such a lifting in my environment. I'd have so much more energy if this would be different. Speaking the truth is not saying, I want to get rid of this or I want to get rid of that, right? It's just noticing what is working and what is not. So if you have a piece of paper, write down, right, what is working, what it's not. The idea, again, here is not to start making like judgmental or decisions out of this, right? It's just to know what is working, I want more of. What is not working, I want less of. And just by noticing these two things, automatically what you're going to start doing is understanding how you can bring more of what works and less of what doesn't. Like I say, a lot of the times our body and our conscious mind knows where we need to be, knows what we need, needs what we want, and is working towards that, even if consciously we don't think it's happening, right? So as we speak our truth and we speak it to ourselves, we're also speaking it to our body and our conscious mind so that they know the contrast. The more we learn about the contrast of this is good and this is bad, and this I like and this I don't, this I want more of, this I want less of, that contrast creates a gap in which you start learning how to say yes and no very easily, and you also start a conversation with more than just yourself to creating a happier and satisfied life, right? So personal life, right? What is a yes? What is a no? What works? What doesn't? What you want more of because it's already really awesome and I want more of this. And what do you want less? That you just, if it would disappear tomorrow, oh, would you be relieved, right? And so we're going to go in the second environment, which is the professional hub, right? So where do you expand or contract in your work? Again, just notice, right? In either your career, your work, your contracts, your jobs, however you word it, right? And maybe even notice how are you wording your professional life? Is it something that satisfies you and amplifies you and wants some expansion, or is it something that where you go, it's a job, it's a job? Just saying those things and speaking your truth, not what you say to everybody else. Oh, I have this amazing job, but inside you don't feel it. Right now you are speaking to yourself, and I invite you to be brutally honest. Not brutally honest in a sense that you want to crush you, right? But honest about how satisfied am I in this professional life of mine. And sometimes the scale to 1 to 10 is interesting as well, right? Because you can say, well, overall, it might be like an 8 out of 10. This part of the job, I love, it's a 10 out of 10. But this part, not so much. I might like my environment, but I may not like the tasks. Or I may like the tasks, but I don't like the environment. Again, the idea is to bring contrast in that conversation and know how you can expand from one to the other. Understanding what works and what doesn't, what I want more of and what I want less of, what I want to say yes to every single day, and what I would say no to if I had a choice. So by saying those things, you're gaining clarity, right? And I know the mind's going to say, well, it's a job, you're not the one in charge of deciding what tasks work and what doesn't. But then again, what's interesting is that everything changes in life. And sometimes there's going to be opportunities within an enterprise or an institution where there's going to be change, there's going to be transformation, there's going to be some kind of transition, because the world is always changing, especially in this pandemic, right? So you never know when an opportunity to get rid of what you don't like could appear, or when you'll get a choice. If we ask you, what would your dream life be? What would your dream job be? So if you've been playing around with these contrasts long enough, you can answer that question without hesitation. And you'll know in a conversation with your boss, every time I do this work, it just brings my energy down, and I wish there was another way I could go about this, right? And then you can go in solution mode. But right now, for today, the idea is just to speak the truth. Because sometimes we feel like overwhelmed that nothing works, but it's not true. There's always some part in there that is working, some part that is satisfying, some part that is nourishing. And that nourishing part, you don't want to lose. No matter what happens, you don't want to lose that nourishing part, because that's the one that makes you empowered. That's the one that feeds your soul. That's the one that makes you like grand. So however small that part is, you need to know where it is so that you can focus on it and attract more of it. All right. So let's go in the third environment, which is the creative one, right? As human beings, we all have this creative spark. I mean, seriously, look at children in any circumstance and see how they automatically go to creative mode. They're in imagination land. They're creating new games, new rules, dressing up in however and whoever they are. So as we grow older, as we go through the school systems, as we gain a job, and our time is is more managed because we have this schedule, we lose the spark within us to actually create. But that creation is what keeps our imagination open, and it's what keeps our hearts happy. So where is that creative spark in your life, right? What does that creative life look like for you? What's in there? What works? What doesn't? What do you have creatively that you so amazingly love? And what would you love but is not there? Sometimes it's funny, right? I see adults all the time starting to do mandalas or start painting or start singing or start dancing, and all of a sudden they come alive in every single aspect of their lives. Why? Because touching that creative part of life brings it to life in every single one of them. Even in our personal lives, we need that imagination to keep finding new ways of expanding, new ways of creating, new ways of meeting people, new ways of just making food for dinner, right? It's the same thing for the professional world. We're challenged every single day. There's no 2 days that's going to be the same, and every single day are going to bring obstacles or resistance or surprises that we have to manage. And the more that imagination and creative part of us is alive, the more it's going to be easy to meet those obstacles with confidence and create amazing solutions for them. So see how that creative spark exists in your life, and just again speak honestly about it. Are you in touch with it enough, or are you not in touch with it enough? Some may even be in touch with it a little bit too much. I have some dreamer friends, which I absolutely love, but for them, the creative part has taken so much part of their lives that all of a sudden they lose track of time, they lose track of their job. They're not there for the people they love. They're not there for their family. So it's just to being honest in that conversation to say what part creative spark takes in my life, and is it the right one for me? How do I feel about that creative part in me? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I want more of it? Do I want less of it? And where do I want to be expressing it? That fourth environment now we're going to be touching is community, right? The community scene is where we as human beings connect. And community can be very, very wide, right? It could be family, it could be social events, it could be friends, it could be hubs professionally, it could also be locally, like just for a municipality or for your neighborhood, or it could be regionally. It could be international. I mean, I've seen so many expats have amazing communities. So the idea is how community is in your life. How do you use it? How do you connect with it? And where do you contribute in that community? Because part of being human is also being part of a social environment. So if we're always all alone and we don't have any community, we live within ourselves, then there's no conversation, right? There's no offering, but there's also no receiving. So understanding what part community plays in our life allows us to understand where we contribute and where we can receive. So see how that community scene exists, right? So the first part again is speak the truth. Where does that community stand in your life? Does it even exist? Or maybe it's taking over all of your life so you don't have that individual part anymore, right? Or it's hard to have a business or have a job because community is so important. So see where that community exists, what you like about it, and what don't you like about it. How do you feel about it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it balanced? Is it completely imbalanced? Is it feeding and nourishing, or is it overwhelming and tiring? Notice where you stand in all of these different environments, right? The personal, the professional, the creative, and the collective. So that allows you to understand how are you moving through life, right? These are four spheres where each day you sort of like touch to mostly every one of them. There's just the professional, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But the other three are always there. There's always a personal aspect to your life in the morning, in the afternoon, in the night. There's always a creative part. The way you interact with people is creative to start off with, right? It's an art form. Relationship is an art form. And then there's always community that if you always live alone, then it's very, very hard to live a life because we are meant to be social beings. So see how those four scenes work out, right? Now for the next few minutes, what I'm going to offer you to do is step up another level, right? And see how these, what I call lateral aspects to your life come out and how you view them. So how we'll start, the first one is the environment, right? So how do you view your environment? Do you have enough room? Do you have enough space? Do you feel secure? Do you feel loved? Do you feel wanted? Do you feel useful? Do you feel interactive? Is there nature or is it just structure? Is it a home that you have or is it just a building? Depending on the words you use to express how your environment is in your life, you have a way of understanding how you feel about it and what works and what doesn't, right? Again, the idea is just to sit back and notice. And it's funny what happens when you start noticing these things. Once you start looking at your environment as an observer, that's understanding what works in that environment for me and what doesn't, is that you start noticing the smallest things, right? For me, at one point, it was I needed light. I was living in an apartment where there was not enough light. And so that's one of the things I keep asking now when I'm looking to move, right? I need light and I need air. And right now it's absolutely amazing because I live on the 5th floor of a building where I have light in here every single day and I literally see the sky in the morning when I wake up. So there's nothing more alive for me than to live in this light and air. I don't need to be outside to have the light and air. That's the funny part. All I need is the light coming in and to see the sky to know the air is there. So that's That's my truth, right? But then for somebody else, maybe that's not going to work at all. So that's the funny part. Environment. How do you want to be connected with nature in your vicinity? Do you want to be able to walk outside and just feel the trees and feel the shrubs and smell the flowers? Or are you okay if you just see it in the mountain in the backgrounds, right? Do you want to hear the birds in the morning when you wake up? Or for you, that's just absolutely annoying and it doesn't work. So speaking your truth about your environment also allows you to know how comfortable or not you are in your environment. And it gives you clues as to what you could tweak that would make you even more comfortable. Now, I'm not saying that you can change this day, like in one day, snap your fingers and everything's going to be hunky dory, right? The idea is to know where it could evolve. And that's always interesting because that opens the door to new possibilities. Now, the second aspect that's like lateral is the relationships. What kind of relationships do you have? And are they the types of relationships that you want, that you like, that feeds you, that supports you, that's reciprocal? Or is it just one way? Are you the ones always being the savior holding them up? Or are you the one always being the victim where people are always helping you? So what type of conversation do you have in those relationships? The idea here is to speak your truth, right? Because we make up scenarios in our mind that it's often the other person's fault. But when we sit down and we're being really honest with ourselves about what part of me is actually feeding on these relationships and how, if these are the relationships I have, are they helping me become the person I know I've always been and that I always will be, right? How are these people and these relationships allowing me to be in my I am more and more each day? What do I like? What I don't like? What I love and I want more of? And what doesn't really work for me and I'd so love for it to be less? And how am I setting these relationships up, right? How am I contributing to these relationships? Is it the way I'm contributing is helpful or hindering? Is it opening so that we have a two-way conversation and communication? Or is it really contracted and protective where I'm afraid to speak my truth because speaking it may screw everything up? And if that's the case, then why am I afraid to speak my truth? Now, after the environment and the relationships, the two next ones are the ones I call the goodies, right? The first one is the adventures. I mean, we all need a challenge in life, right? We all need to have fun and enjoyment. And because as human beings, we're here to grow, we're here to learn, we're here to expand. Adventure makes us push ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone. And that's how we can add something new to our lives. So, and adventure means different things to different people, right? So, what is adventure to you? And what does it look like in your life? Are you so in the humdrum of every single day that you sort of like forgot to put in some like spots of spontaneity or spots of creativity or spots of explorations? It doesn't, I mean, adventure for me doesn't mean you have to go climb a mountain, right? Adventure could just be walking around the block and meeting your new neighbors. It could be exploring a new part of town that you've never been to. It could be going to a restaurant every single week or passing time in a museum. There's different ways adventure will expand you. So, what is that truth? Where is the adventure in your life? Is there enough? Maybe it is for you enough, and that's okay. To know that is already fulfilling. Like, I have adventure in my life. This is really cool, right? But perhaps it's not enough. So in either case, and sometimes it may be too much. I mean, it may be too much. I feel like I'm on an adventure every single day, and I'd love for it to like settle down just a little bit so I could have a little bit more routine. speak the truth, right? Just notice, what does your life look like? It's not a matter of wanting it to be more, wanting it to be, it just, yeah, what does it look like? And then the last aspect is knowledge. We go about life in the beginning years where we're in the school system, right? So we're constantly expanding our knowledge. And then oftentimes we find a job, we settle down, and all of a sudden that knowledge stops. That gain of knowledge stops. And it's not that we don't want to, it's just that we get overwhelmed with time and responsibilities, and we sort of like forget to keep growing intellectually. And for most people, that's okay, but for others, it's not, right? And we see the companies now more and more encourage continuous education. Why? Because things are evolving so fast on our planet. Technology is changing things weekly, and at the same time, our mindset is like so shifting. Just in neurosciences, how our brain works, it's amazing what expansion in knowledge we've gained in the past like 5 years. So understanding yourself better and understanding how the world works better allows you to interact better. So that's the first part of knowledge, right? It's just understanding yourself better every single day. But the second part of knowledge is really saying, I've always wanted to paint, so I'd love to learn how to paint. I've always wanted to run a marathon, so I'd love to get that knowledge and get some coaching so I could run this marathon. So it's part understanding yourself better so that you can grow, but it's also understanding where you want to grow, in what areas. Are you like, oh, that would be so cool. I've always dreamt I could do this. And the funny part is life has is really there to meet you. I mean, last year when I did my Life Momentum Manifesto, I actually wrote down I wanted to learn about quantum physics. I don't know why, it just popped out. And and yes, I have really weird ways of learning and very odd subjects to explore. But quantum physics came to me. There was, because of the pandemic, there was 2 or 3 scientists offering like free webinars and opening up classes that used to be like so expensive. I would have never thought of expanding in that area because I just didn't feel like investing that much money for me, right? It might be okay for somebody else, but for me, it was just out of curiosity. And so these courses opened up, and all of a sudden I could be learning about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and exploring that aspect of life that's really interesting at a cellular level. So just putting down what kind of knowledge you have, what works for you and what doesn't. Where would you like to learn more? Where would you like to master? What would you like to master, right? And it could be really, really funny. It's frightening and at the same time exciting to know that you have so much opportunity to learn. All right, so how about we wrap up day 4, right? So just within spontaneity, right? So what came up for you in your personal life? What came up for you in your professional life? What came up for you in your creative life and your community life? When you redirect and you speak your truth now, how do you feel about it? Having like thought about the good, the bad, the more, the less. How do you stand now, right? There's often sort of like, it's like I can breathe now that I know that this is where I am. And the same thing when you think of your environment and your relationships. Now that you took just a few moments, it wasn't, I mean, we've only been here half an hour. How does it feel now that you know where you stand in your environment and in your relationships? It's very empowering to know where you stand. And when you think of adventure and knowledge, I know that these are 2 also important parts that need to be in your life, and that you actually taking the time to just think about them and see where they are and where they could be in your life. and how you feel about adventure and knowledge. This is how you come back to now, right? The fast forward to now is knowing this is who I am. This is what I want and don't want, and being able to speak it. Giving yourself permission to speak it, or at least to yourself, if not to others yet. Because once you get comfortable with your truth, the beauty of it is it gets easier and easier to speak to others. So see how that settles down within you, right? See how that truth trickles down and just like pushes away all the doubts and the worries and the hesitations and the why I should and I shouldn't and I couldn't. And it just pushes away everything so that it allows you to be here and now in your life as it is. And at the same time, know what you could be tweaking, either to welcome more of or welcome more less of in your life. So that's it for us for day 4. Thank you very much for being here again, and I will see you again tomorrow for the last day of the challenge. Ciao, people. See you tomorrow.